meeting of School District 5 Board of Trustees to order. Kim, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Sue.
Hey.
Hey,
All right.
slight lag there, Sue.
Public comment. This is the time for comment on public matters that are not on the agenda within our jurisdiction. I don't see any visitors online, and I don't see anyone present here, so.
Lila doesn't have a comment?
Maybe. Lila, do you get a public comment?
Lila, I mean?
No.
Okay.
You want to tell everyone what a great job they're doing?
All right. Old business, essential worker stipend.
Yes, and Mitcha is presenting tonight.
Pronounced Misha.
Misha, okay. It's okay, it happens a lot.
I hadn't even caught that. I didn't even. I am bad.
It's okay. All right. So at the December 8th board meeting, we had an agenda item that was labeled hazard pay. And I think most of our trustees have seen the emails that have floated around between MTSBA and various school districts about that particular issue. And at that point in time, we had guidance from MTSBA that hazard pay was an allowable expenditure for CRF money. And but when we brought it forward, we took it through personnel and we took it through finance and then brought it to the full board. But just prior to that meeting, MTSBA sent out this list of, here's all these checklist things that you have to make sure that you do under advice of the Treasury Department and Department of Labor. And so we asked that the item be tabled at that point so that we could make sure that we had all the items on the checklist taken care of. And the next day, Gwen spent an inordinate amount of time making sure that all of the items were checked off and we were ready to go. We were working in my office at about 4:45 p.m. On what this was going to look like and the costs and who would get the stipend and all those kind of things. And then an email came out at 4:45 that said from the budget director of the state governor that it was not going to be an allowable expense. And that kind of threw us into a little bit of a tailspin, and a lot of districts across the state, some who have negotiated this into an MOA, others who have already board approved it, maybe even paid it out. And so lots of districts are having to backpedal. So in some ways, I'm really grateful that we tabled the item when we did and that we didn't vote on it, because that gave us a little bit of a reprieve from having to go back and undo some things that we had done. So in the meantime, we reached out to some other districts about how they were addressing the hazard pay thing. And one of the districts that we spoke to and talked to was Billings Public Schools. And as you may recall from the presentation last time, Billings was paying a $1,500 essential worker stipend. And they had figured out another way to use CRF funds in order to make that happen. And that's what we're going to present to you tonight for your consideration. The financial implications, we've got it dialed down to $366,000 approximately. And the motion is a little more complicated, as we'll explain and show you through the budgeting of how this is going to look. So I'm going to dive into the presentation. Might have to shrink my screen just a little bit. And you'll notice that we've changed it from hazard pay. So when we first presented it at Personnel and Finance, it was essential worker. Then we changed it to hazard pay for the board, and now we've changed it back to essential worker. And why are we considering the pay? Again, this is our recommendation to distribute a stipend to essential workers in the district. And it's a little complicated. When it was hazard pay, there were clearly employees in the district who would not qualify for the pay based on the hazard pay definition. And and I put in here at the discretion of the district. And you'll see who we've included and who has been excluded from the essential worker stipend. But really looking and focusing on staff and employees that have had to work either alongside each other as colleagues or in support of students, either remotely or in person. And so that gives a little bit of a background. And when I put this together, it was on a gray slide, and I don't know how it changed to green, but it's green now. So I'm not going to point fingers tonight.
Jelly fingers.
So in November, we got our initial guidance on from MTSA about hazard pay and using coronavirus relief funds. Then in early December, we ran it through personnel, finance committee, more guidance came out, but the new guidance said, okay, well, time out, we got to stop and make sure that we're doing this correctly. And then, so it was tabled. And then on December 9th, the next day after the board meeting, that's when we got some direction from the governor's budget director that it would not be an allowable use of CRF. And so just to clarify for the board, the federal government said, yes, you can use this for hazard pay. The money that was allocated to the states and to be distributed by the governor can kind of work within those rules and can say yay or nay to some of those things. And so that's ultimately what came down out of this. So then on December 10th, after we've had some discussions with other districts, we looked at what Billings was doing and asked them for some guidance. And I did talk to Lance Melton, Montana School Boards Association today about this, just to make sure again that this was allowable. And he said that, you know, if Billings has had the approval early on for this, that we would also fall under that same argument. So, so the governor's budget director, Tom Livers, said yes, this was allowable, and so did Billings auditors, which may be inconsequential. We all have different auditors, but generally speaking, it was allowable to reallocate administrative salaries to the CRF fund at a maximum of 2/3. That was directly from the governor's budget director. And then that money then that would, from an administrator's salary, so we'll have an affidavit for all of our administrators, and basically each month that you work, you identify approximately, on best estimate, what percentage of your time was spent on COVID-related issues. For me, I could say 125%. You know, if I was just counting a regular work day and then all the other additional time. But at the most that they're going to allow is 2/3, so 66% of that. And
6% of 125?
We're not doing new math. So, and again, you know, going back to what some of the other AA districts are doing, and there have been some recent articles about what Missoula's doing, Bozeman's doing. Everybody's kind of trying some different things. And some districts have stayed away from it altogether and are looking at doing something different that doesn't involve CRF funds. So what we're proposing is that there is in general, a $500 essential worker stipend for district employees who meet the criteria for essential worker, which was kind of, part of it was defined up above, and then the rest of it's defined here. And then we also have a prorated amount for employees who work less than 20 hours and employees who work less than 10 hours. So that's where the $250 and $100 comes in. But I'm going to guess 95% of our employees are in that $500 range. And then, so for purposes of the payment, employees are defined as certified, classified, custodial, maintenance, grounds, non-union employees, nurses, staff that teach driver's education, but that might be the only thing that they teach. So they may not be in the building teaching, but they're coming in and teaching classes for driver's ed and or driving with students and administrators. And so for this payment, the following employees are excluded. When Gwen pulls the initial, who are our employees, there's like 1,250 employees listed because we have students who work as game workers. That, I was running the chain gang or, something along those lines. Seasonal or temporary workers, we hire seasonal employees to mow, paint, different things like that. So substitutes, we have additional stipends for substitutes based on days that they work. So there's some compensation that's happened along the way for some of those. Even for our student employees, like our temporary custodians, student custodians, we're actually paying them at a higher rate than we probably would have in other circumstances. And then anybody who is an independent contractor or individuals who work in the district but are paid by other employees. So that includes SROs, they're paid by the police department, CSVT workers, they're paid by the hospital. They aren't on our payroll, so there's no mechanism to pay those individuals as well. So, and again, it's a pretty small group, but we also have to be somewhat judicious in making sure that, as we work through this process, that, an auditor is not going to come back and say, oh, well, you couldn't pay that person because they aren't actually an employee of the district, they're an employee of the hospital. And so then it's our intent, pending approval from the board, to run a special payroll on December 18th, which is when we're also running the comp time payout and excess personal leave payout for classified and certified staff. So just timeline again, we presented to personnel on December 2nd, finance on the 4th, board on the 8th, and again, board on the 15th. And so it's taken some different iterations. And we're going to talk about the funding here. One of the things that I want to, that I'll own and take responsibility for is last time at the board meeting, we sat here and said, we have uncovered every stone. We're looking for ways to spend these dollars. And not knowing that, we had nothing from MTSBA saying, hey, have you thought about this option? The one that we're considering, that was something that Billings did that was independent of MTSBA. We did not know at that point. And literally Gwen was sitting there like trying to see, well, can I get the cell phone stipend or the mileage, the fuel allowance for certain employees? We were trying to find all these little ticky-tacky things that, 200 line items that, ended up being about $30,000, $40,000. So at that point, we felt like we had done due diligence with, the guidance that we had received. But we found out that there are some other ways to address this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the budget in total for fiscal year 2021, because in the cover sheet it said that it's $370,000, $366,000 approximately. But I also said it's budget neutral for 2021, and want to kind of explain how we're proposing that we do this. So you have the general fund budget for the elementary and high school, and then the board also approved in that budget, they approved using money from the interlocal agreement, $345,000 on the elementary side, $393,000 on the high school side, to the tune of $738,000 out of the interlocal agreement to fill in the gaps on our budget deficit for this year. We have some projected savings currently, and this is as of December 15th, 20. We put the date on the spreadsheet so that if we ever have to come back, because these can be changing documents. There might be more money than what we're projecting, or there might be a little bit less. It's hard to tell. But in substitute pay, our staff is not taking time off. One, there aren't enough substitutes to go around. We're doing a lot of comp time type stuff. So about $178,000 to the good projected for this year. Student activity travel. We've canceled all of our Non-conference games, we've shortened schedules, you know, so we're not going to billings, you know, at $6,000 a night for a football game or a volleyball game, things like that. So there's some savings there. Retirement termination pay, I think we have 4 on the list right now for retirement for next year that have come forward and said, I want to retire, and there's a termination pay. Usually we're sitting probably around a dozen or so. So there's some savings there in a pretty good chunk, $340,000. We always budget for what we think lane movement is going to be, and sometimes it comes in a little higher, sometimes it comes in a little lower. Lane movements are all done, so there's a savings of about $63,000 there.
What's lane movement mean?
Lane movement is when I earn enough, as a teacher, I earn enough credits to move over a lane. Steps is the years of employment, and lanes are education. And then health insurance reserve. We always budget for more employees coming on to our health insurance plan. We give it a pretty healthy budget because you never know what's going to happen in the insurance world and with new employees, and there's another $238,000 worth of savings there. So bringing that grand total of savings to $948,000. So with that, if you were to take the $948,000 and subtract the what was agreed to in the interlocal agreement to contribute, we would be to the good of $209,000 moving forward just for this fiscal year. Not talking about the stipend or anything else. We're looking at not needing to use the $738,000 and having an additional $200,000 to potentially put into the interlocal agreement at the end of this year.
And that's just from the general fund?
Just general fund, yep. Gwen, am I doing a good job of explaining
You
this?
are.
Okay. If you have questions, Gwen will be glad to answer. Or Jack. So just wanted to give you that general fund picture because now we're going to talk about how this essential worker stipend would be funded. So we came up with the total of approximately $366,000. 156 of which would come from general fund. And then we're able to break that up into what an employee is, what funding source they're paid from. So federal programs are some money, food service employees. So all of our food service employees, their essential worker stipend would come out of food service, traffic ed for the traffic ed teachers, transportation, tuition. So we're able to garner those funds from those, garner the money for the essential worker stipend from those different funds. So it's not all hitting the general fund, right? So $312,000 out of the 366 would be hitting the general fund. We currently have some open purchase orders, and that's a little bit problematic, but we also don't want to return the 1,500 or so Chromebooks that we've ordered and are waiting on. And so we're looking at how we're going to reallocate CRF money and then use general fund to pay for those when they come in. So it's a matter of moving funds around so that we're able to maintain those. And you know, and from a business standpoint, a purchase order is as good as writing a check, right? So you've committed to making this purchase. They've done the work. They're getting it shipped. They're doing all of that, and so it's kind of a commitment that you are good for what you're saying you're going to purchase. So then it gets to the administrative salaries. So if we're able to garner 2/3 of all administrator salaries, we have the funds, $992,000, to move to the CRF and then free up money in the general fund for the essential worker stipend. And the open purchase orders.
Yeah. The late payment for the open purchase orders that come after December 31st.
Yep. Questions?
I think I'm confused. So I thought one of the reasons we were doing this, I mean, it's always nice to give people a bonus or a stipend, but I thought I thought that we had returned the CRF money to the state on December 31st if we hadn't spent it. But now it seems like we have spent the entire CRF money and we're talking about moving money from the general fund to pay for this stipend? I think I'm getting it wrong, I hope I'm getting it wrong, but.
Yeah.
Jack?
We still have $460,000 left in the CRF funds to spend, but we still have outstanding commitments for the purchase of things.
Right.
Those two numbers combined together now versus a week ago is about $990,000. In order to free up money to pay for the stipends, we have to move $992,000 worth of expenditures out of the general fund, out of the various budgeted funds into the into the CRF funds in order to free up money in the various funds to cover the 6 stipend areas up there and then the outstanding purchase orders. So to answer your question, we have not spent all the CRF money. If we don't, it returns to the state, and the state spends it as they desire. And do I want to use the word journal voucher entries?
Yeah, technically that's what we're doing, is moving the administrator's salaries out of the general fund, the actual expenditures out of the general fund, and moving them to CRF. So we will, in fact, have spent all of the CRF funds in that process.
And because of doing that, now we have money in the general fund to spend on those items right there, which we're allowed to by law.
Right, I guess what I mean, do we have to do this? To me, the purpose of the stipend was to spend all the money from the CRF funds that have to be spent by December 30th. And if we can in fact put your salaries onto that, so that we no longer have any money we need to return to CRF, do we still want to do a stipend? I mean, this is not coming out of the general fund, this is now.
And I think that's the question.
Is that true?
Well, I think that's the question for the board to consider is we're going to do this. And what it's going to do is create a savings. If I go back to here, projected savings, you could put administrative salaries in that projected savings, right? So that would be money that would go, all of it would go back to the interlocal agreement at the end of the year, any unspent funds. So we can use the CRF to pay for administrator salaries, a portion of it. But that frees up money in the general fund. And what we're basically saying is it's a trade-off in order to make the stipend work. I think the question is, does the board want to take the money that was saved by using administrator stipends in the CRF fund to pay the essential worker stipend, or do you want to put it back into the interlocal agreement? To me, that's the question.
Jack?
I'm hoping everybody understands that we cannot very few people qualify for hazard pay. We cannot pay a stipend out of the CRF funds. We can pay a stipend out of those 5 funds that are up there. In order to pay the stipend out of those, we need to transfer money out of the general fund to be able to do that. And that money, we not transfer money out, transfer expenditure, already existing expenditures out of the general fund and enter those as expenditures in the CRF fund in order to free up the money. So then.
That means we're under no time pressure. I mean, I thought the reason we were meeting here is we had to spend this money by December 30th. So
Yes.
we've dealt with all the money to spend by December 30th, we've gotten that all covered. And so now we're talking about something that we can do in January, February, March, we could do it a year from now or 10 years from now.
No,
So on the second sheet I handed out, there's a list of 14 items. In order to make this work, you have to understand the connectedness of all those 14 items. They're all related to what we're having to decide tonight. And can sound, you use the phrase, complicated. I could use the phrase convoluted. But there's a lot of moving parts to it. And because of the need to make a decision, in order to make it work, we have to decide tonight what we're gonna spend out of the, well, maybe we don't need to decide tonight. I think we do, but maybe we don't need to decide tonight that we're gonna, pay the stipends. We could maybe defer that till January, February, but it just seems like we should make the entire decision now because it's all tied together. We wouldn't be here talking about any of this if we were willing to give $500,000 back to the state and not pay any stipends. We wouldn't even have to have a meeting tonight.
But are those two connected? It seems like we've dealt with the we no longer have to give $500,000 back to the state. We've dealt with all that, right? Is that correct?
Not yet.
Not formally.
No, not
But we
yet.
know how to do that without, and that's unrelated to the stipends. But then now we have extra money in the general fund, we could put the stipends if we wanted, but we don't, but there's no time pressure anymore. 'Cause we have-
I would agree with you, Rebecca, that you're right. We probably don't have a time pressure once we make the initial movement of moving the administrative salaries into the CRF fund.
Right.
And we have a decision, do we want to do stipends? When do we want to do that? Or do we really just want to go to the interlocal agreement with the extra money? Or wait and see what the budget looks like?
I think, yeah, I'm not trying to be argumentative, I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
I think,
But no, I think that's a very good clarifying
I
point.
think you clearly understand it, Rebecca. One of the challenges is that we operate in the public. And so employees, these started in a couple of committees. Employees have the right to attend those. When they leave those meetings, they talk to other employees. And so I think to stop this at this point, as a matter of fact, it actually happened in Colstrip, and their employees were tipped over. But I mean, they're just inflamed. And I mean, if we could make all these decisions and get our plans all together in private, then you wouldn't be at this place where you're like, wow, now, the word is out that this is what we're going to do. The word is out that we can afford to do this. And that's the challenge, Rebecca. I absolutely hear what you're saying. I think you fully understand exactly what we're talking about. And we have, 750 employees that are coming to work every single day and risking their, the chance of getting the COVID. And we're the only school district in the state in our size that opened up, and right out of the gate, everybody's coming to work, kids are coming to school. We've stayed open. Our peers have closed, 2 weeks here and a week there. And I mean, Kalispell has really stayed the course. And we wouldn't have even considered this if we didn't really believe in it, right? I mean, I really think our employees have gone over and above all of their, the majority of other AA schools and our area schools are doing something of this type for their employees. And so, to stop at this point, I think would really drive a wedge between us and our employees. And I absolutely hear what you're saying. I mean, I'm all about saving the money. The money was first to get the things we needed, the PPE, goggles so we didn't have to share all of those things. And we did all of that. I mean, we pushed money out to the buildings and said, figure out what you need, and here's some money to take care of it with. And other school districts did not do that. They spent it all at the central administration. Their people weren't involved in those decisions. So we really did that. And then in secondary to that, we said, okay, what are we doing in the general fund that we could subsidize with this money and make this money go further and make our general fund, kind of help our issue that we're dealing with and that we've been dealing with for 2 or 3 years. So I think we've done the appropriate steps. I don't think this is, unreasonable. it's a $500 stipend. You saw some $1,500 stipends there. But I really think if we stop tonight, it'll be difficult. I really do. And I just hope we think about that in this decision. And I feel bad that we're in this place where you're kind of in a bad place, but we don't get to operate in everything we do is public. So that's the challenge we face when we do things like this.
We're not pressured into a decision.
Ursula has a question, and then I think maybe Amy does. Ursula?
I do. I just wanted to say, well, I'm happy with the last couple comments because it does clear it up, and that was the impression that I had. And I just wanted to say that I think that we, you know, what Gwen is saying is that this is a hard position, but I think on the other hand, we could look at this as a great opportunity because here we are where we do have a choice to make. We don't have to find a way to spend this money. There's a way to spend it. We have enough that we get to make a choice, and we have this opportunity where not because we're in the public eye and not because we need to find something to do, but just as a recognition of what everybody has been doing this year, we can approve this. And, you know, it's just kind of looking at it from that other perspective, that this isn't something we have to do. This is a choice. And personally, I think that it is a great opportunity in such a hard year to be able to have this choice to give these stipends.
Thank you, Ursula. Amy, did you have a question? Or comment?
I did, Lance. Thank you. I had a question for Gwen. When needs to clarify for the rest of the board that we will be facing in June or in July a minimum of a $1.2 million budget shortfall because of all of our negotiated raises and agreements. And I just want us to make this decision with that full knowledge and not be surprised that we have agreed to this and then come July, we're facing a $1.2 million minimum shortfall projected. And I'm wondering what Gwen thinks about that, about this money contributing to that. And I also want to say, when I say that, it sounds probably like doom and gloom, not in favor of this. I'm actually am in favor of this bonus, but I think we have to be very knowledgeable, have our eyes wide open of what we're going to be facing in July, know that we are doing this, like Rebecca really, she realized that this is a choice. This has become, instead of we have to spend this money, this is now a choice of we are acknowledging our teachers. And I guess I am troubled by the thought that we are not doing this under pressure. So any perception that there is like, we must do this now, I hope that is not the case. I mean, I personally am not going to be swayed by that, because when we're trying to figure out what money's there, what we can do with it, I do not feel like we then obligate ourselves. And so I hope the rest of the board feels that way too. But I understand what Gwen is telling, that perhaps the perception is there, that there will be anger and outrage, but I don't think that is the case, because if we choose to use this money so that we don't have to lay people off potentially or put off the decision, I mean, I think we're all just really care about the staff and their future. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
And Amy, I agree with, the fact that we're probably facing a deficit. What I'm comforted in is if it's a $1.2 million deficit, we have approximately $738,000 that we're saying we're not going to use from the interlocal agreement that goes towards that deficit, plus an additional $200,000 in projected savings that would also go towards that as well. So there's there's a difference between 1.2 million and 948,000, but, you know, I think given the ability of the district to manage those resources and find ways to do that, you know, is certainly part of what gives me comfort in this. You know, not that there couldn't be some tough decisions as we go through the budgeting process, but we always seem to find a way to try and make some of that work. So I think your point's well made, and I agree. We don't have to make the decision tonight. You know, there's not a time pressure for the decision on the essential worker stipend, but I also think that we've brought it through committees. We've brought it to the board for the second time. We've been very transparent in all of this. One of the things that, you know, I wrestled with when, you know, on December 9th after that board meeting, when they said that we couldn't do hazard pay, was, man, I put this out there to our staff and, you know, in a very public way, and now I'm going to have to kind of go back, and no fault of anybody in the district, but just that, you know, it feels like here's this thing we're talking about, and then, oh, sorry, never mind. So I guess, you know, as far as the recommendation that's in front of the board tonight, it would be my hope that it would move forward. And not because of a time pressure to do it, but because we've worked through a process on this already.
Can I just, because I've been listening to everyone, it's very, very informative. Two things, I mean, like you said, the classified employees have heard about this. I mean, all the staff. But I guess if we don't use this money by December 31st, we give it.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. And that is why this is a very different thing that was brought to the board and to the committee. To me, what was brought to the committee is the board was saying, we have to spend this money. Here's one of the ways we spend is giving it to our teachers. And for that, I'm like, great, you know, do it back to say we're giving it to our teachers. Absolutely. But at this point, I guess most people probably realize that I feel that it's, take a pause. We no longer have to get this done by December 31st. Let's look at our overall budget, you know, and because last week's proposal was different to me, because it was money that we use it or lose it. And this is no longer use it or lose it money.
It's a good point, Rebecca. Any other conversation, or would someone feel comfortable making a motion? A nice one that Jack has written out with multiple whereases.
We just make a motion as stated on Chuck's very wordy message.
Well, to me, the critical parts of this is to recognize the need that at finance on Friday, we're going to be reviewing the budgets, and there's going to be a range of deficits of 1.1 to $2 million, and that we have contractual obligations of 1.25 million that's included in those deficit amounts. Now, we have 1.5, we have 1.25 in the interlocal agreement right now to cover that, but it would be nice to have that 738, and as much as that 209, we may not get all of it, we may get a little bit more in there to help with that also. Because what goes through my mind is when we enter into contracts with the employees, whether it's certified, classified, custodial, or maintenance, we've created obligations down the road, and we should probably make sure those, a portion or all of those amounts are in the interlocal agreement to cover those. Because if it's not, and with the changes in the legislature makeup and in the governor's office, we don't have no idea what funding is going to look like down the road. And to make sure that we have something that can buffer a year while we figure out what may become of personnel configurations would be helpful. Without something like that, we may be facing what Helena and Great Falls and Billings is, and that's some dramatic budget cuts. So to me, the purpose of this and trying to continue to attain some savings in each of those areas is that provide some comfort to the staff that we have, that we're trying to minimize the impacts of what will happen at least in the next 12 months. Barring that, we have some really interesting discussions. And so each one of these items are supposed to illustrate different aspects of all the influences that are going into making these decisions here. And the next year's budget to me is significant, and the ability to continue to save some money so we do not use any of the money that we did approve for the interlocal agreement, but reserve that for the next, to be spent out of the interlocal agreement, but to reserve it for the next year. That was the primary reason for putting all that in, just to recognize all the nuances and gymnastics that we have to consider in making this decision here.
Well, if I can just use the language at the top, I'd love to make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve payment of an essential worker stipend in the amount of approximately $366,600.
Wait, isn't the first motion to move the money from the CRS to our administrative pay?
It doesn't really require a motion, Rebecca.
Okay.
I think just, so that you're fully aware of what's going on is why we.
So really what we're following through with is the therefore that's near the top of the back side. That's really what we're trying to direct the administration to do, is what that therefore says.
So do you want me to reword it? Is the motion okay?
I suppose as long as it's as.
Oh, as presented.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I second that.
Kim seconds that.
I'll second it, Lance. Oh.
Oh, you're a little bit late, but I appreciate the sentiment. Further discussion? I'd just like to say that, I know everyone in the district has been working incredibly hard to keep us open. It's one of the things I'm most proud of. I've been on the board for 6 years, and we've done a lot of things, built new schools, remodeled, but this is pretty amazing. If it's a tangible pat on the back, anything we can do to support the teachers and bus drivers and custodians, central admin. I mean, it's the best thing for our kids in our community, so I'm wholeheartedly behind this stipend.
And I'd also just like to make a comment. Thank you for the hours and hours you must have put into this. Yes. Wow. My goodness.
Which version?
It all culminates here, Micah.
Yeah, that does.
Amazing.
And I should have asked for public comment. Lila, we're looking at you.
For what?
Yeah. All right. Any other comments?
I guess to be clear, I am for a tangible way of recognizing the great job our teachers are doing. I am opposed to this particular one because I feel like it was conceived for another purpose, and we haven't really thought through exactly what the best thing is. We thought of, oh my gosh, we have to spend this $500,000, let's do it now. I'm not sure if, given a month, we would decide on 500,000 or more, or, as I said, I am totally for the idea of giving a tangible thank you to the teachers, but I'm not sure I think that this is the time or way to do it, and I at least would need time to look at the numbers.
All right. I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
That's Sue. Amy,
Aye.
how do you vote? Ursula?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed?
Unopposed.
One opposed. Okay, motion carries 9-1. Thank you. One other item on our agenda.
Yes. So last week, we brought forward the memorandum of agreement between the Kalispell Public Schools and the Kalispell Federation of Classified Personnel. And after we did that, some questions started to come up regarding comp time and paying out comp time for our classified employees. And in particular, employees who do not require subs and usually will have their comp time and they'll use it like during Christmas break or spring break or one of those breaks in the school year to augment their salary during the year. They have X number of days and then they use that time. And if we paid it out, then it potentially puts them in a position where come spring break, they don't have any comp time to be able to use that leave for. And so talking with Chris Hirsch with the classified union, what we're looking to do is strike the language in number 1 about comp time being cashed out and just allowing them to continue to use it as it previously existed in their CBA. We don't see that there's any financial implication to the district in needing to have that paid out at this time. So that is the recommendation in front of you.
Any questions?
Yeah, so there's no sub pay we have to worry about. There's, we don't have to find people to fill their positions while they're gone, correct?
Correct.
They're using it during, when everybody else is out of the building, but they're required to be in the building, per se. Is that right?
They may not even be required to be in the building. Their work calendar may have like spring break. Those are not work days for them.
But they still need to take the time off?
Well, or in their contract, in the CBA, they can have it all paid out at the end of the year, or they can use or not get paid for days and then use that time during that.
So we still may pay out at the end of the year on this? Is that correct?
They'll probably, we're actually encouraging them not to use it when students are in the building. So like your point point you're making, no subs are needed. But there's a couple of days over Christmas that aren't work days for them that they could use the leave in those places and keep their paycheck whole. Because, they're basically missing a couple of weeks of work, the hourly people.
Yeah,
And then at spring break, same thing. So technically it'll get paid out, Scott. They've requested that we didn't just pay it out, in December, that we let them use it where it works best for them. Like some of them will even use it in June to help pay their health insurance and, yeah.
I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
It just, the way that it was originally written, it had some unintended consequences and we did not want to enter into an agreement that brought hardship to those employees.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Entertain a motion to approve this agreement?
I make a motion that we approve the amendment to the CBA. Approve the amendment to the KCFP MOA with Kalispell Public Schools.
Thank you. Well said. Well said.
It's a mouthful.
And that's far enough away I can read it.
Do I hear a second?
And large enough print.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you, Rebecca. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Sue, how do you vote? Ursula?
Aye.
Amy? I'll take that as an aye. Okay.
Yes, aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And that's it. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Adjourn.
Aye.
All right, thank you guys.
That was a weak one. There we go.